Hello, and as always, thank you for watching us here at Palos Heights Community Channel 4. My name is Carol Steffen, on camera with all my buddies here. We're in the studio, which is delightful rather than the street, so that's good. Anyway, I had a wonderful experience last January. I'm active in the League of Women Voters here in Palos Heights, and we had the wisdom to bring in two teachers from our local school to talk about civics. You can't turn the television on anymore that you're not dealing on all the talk stations on what's going on in our government and what's not going on and things that are going on around us and how we're reacting to them. We thought it might be time to bring, I was so impressed by these two teachers that I thought it would be just an enhancement for Channel 4 to show it to our public and hopefully they have to pay attention and get involved. And as the League of Women Voters, always vote, vote, vote. It's your responsibility. It's your way to speak up, so please do. Immediately to my left is Ryan Mahoney. Ryan teaches in the social studies at local school district 128, and it's Independence High School, junior high school, sorry. And to his left is Gina Hanna, and she teaches U.S. history to juniors and government and economics to seniors at school district 128, which is 218. I'm turning them all. I should know these. My kids went to all of these schools. School district 218, Shepherd High School here in Palos Heights. They did a presentation that just rocked us, and we had a beautiful newsletter that followed up and made us so much more aware and how important it is. Civics, well, I'm going to ask them to explain exactly what civics is and why there was kind of a lull in teaching it for a while. And then, I think 2017, a new law was formed in the state of Illinois, and I'm going to let you address that. I want to start with Ryan. We'll start with the junior high.
Well, and I think it's going to be different from the high school, but civics, we really, unfortunately, I think we really concentrate on the basics. Just who runs, sometimes it's as simple as who runs a city, what do your representatives do, how long is the president there. I think we shouldn't be doing that in junior high, but unfortunately you kind of alluded to it that there was a lull in teaching civics. I think that, we mentioned at the event, the League of Women Voters, that we I feel like we get them up to speed where they should be at, keep them aware of their surroundings, their political surroundings, their civic obligations, and then we toss them onto you, and then I think they're in great hands when they go to the high school. I know they are. So yeah, I think our job is just to, like I said, just kind of get them up to speed. They're amazingly aware of social issues. It's a good and a bad. The social media, and they're constantly bombarded with that. But it's great because they're really they're aware of social issues way beyond when I was in junior high. We're constantly raising money, and they constantly have questions about things they hear on TV. So I think that's fantastic. The problem is they have to sort through a lot of messages to get to it, and so it's not finding the information; it's sorting through and making sure that they're hearing hearing not the correct message, but hearing enough information where they can make their own judgments. That's really the big thing. Junior high, they're 12, 13 years old. They should really be formulating what their philosophy of government, their philosophy of civics, and how they relate to their community. So that's really our emphasis in junior high. We do the dreaded Constitution test. That's every junior high student's nightmare. So we do that, and we just started maybe about a month ago.
Do they need to do that, Ryan? Do they need to pass that by 8th grade?
Yeah, well, the mandate did change. That was one of the changes. The mandate, and I think what we grew up with, is that if you don't pass in junior high, you don't go on to high school. That mandate has changed. The wording was a little unclear, so the state had to kind of explain what the mandate is. They cannot actually graduate high school without passing a Constitution test. Okay. But that doesn't prevent the junior high from giving the Constitution test. So we still do give the Constitution test, federal Constitution and state Constitution. And then, we have remediations if they don't pass on the first turn, which rarely happens, which is a great thing. Yeah. But yeah, there are mandates in place. They've just changed over the years.
And what do they think of the Constitution when you study it?
In the beginning, they're terrified because they've heard from their brothers and sisters and cousins that there's this it's up to each individual district to make a Constitution test. So some teachers in some districts, their tests are short, 30, 40 questions, essay questions, can be different formats. Ours is a little bit longer. Ours is about 170 questions. So that's the thing. When we talk about the Constitution on the first day of school, and their eyes just get big and they're terrified. When we start, it's a little overwhelming for them. They've kind of talked about this in their classes going up to junior high, but not so much. They know the very basics. But then I think they start to find it, most of them, pretty fascinating. They love the court cases. They love talking about, we really concentrate on Supreme Court cases that affect their lives. One of our local residents, Nancy Arnold, arranged a field trip, so we went down to the appellate court a couple weeks ago, and they loved it. It was fantastic. So I think they do, once they get over the initial fear, I think they do find it interesting. I think they do really kind of start to find their way, what they believe. And last week we just did an assignment, very simple assignment. We called a quick write. What do you feel is the purpose of government? And you could see the wheels turning, after we've gone through the information. So they got to sort through it. Another thing that they don't quite understand is that we have the federal Constitution, and then we have the Illinois Constitution, and they don't understand why we have two different constitutions. So we have to go through and talk about that a little bit. But I really do think that at the end, they like it, and they always come back from high school and they still remember this and they still remember this fact, and so it's enjoyable for me because you're really just taking students that they don't really know much, and by the time they leave, I feel that they have a pretty good base of knowledge in order to expand when they get to high school and even past that.
Do they have much reaction from what they see on television? Because there's so many talk programs that go on. Now, I don't know if they watch them or not. I know social media is a very strong influence. But do they have any reaction to what's being said about our president, about our government, about our representatives in the state of Illinois, about the voting, about the election, about Chicago? Did they watch that at all?
Oh, yeah. oh, yeah. And the problem is, when we were growing up, you had the news, and you knew what time the news was on. You could trust the news. Right. Now I feel they're just getting snippets, whether it's from Twitter, whether it's from Facebook. They do watch the news, and they have a lot of questions, and their questions are they're fascinating because you could kind of see that they understand it, or they get a little bit of it, and then they want to expand on top of it, whether it's immigration or we recently just went through, because their big question is, what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican? And I think we know it's a pretty complicated question. It's at the same time it's an easy question, but it's also a complicated question. So they want to take everything in terms of issues. What they see on TV, you're exactly right. Immigration, gun control, crime. That's where they kind of use their formulations. I feel this way, so this is kind of the direction I'm going. So, yeah, I think media and social media, I think it's fantastic, but it does make it a little bit more difficult. Like I said, it's the sorting through the information to get to what really truly matters.
Well, it's so contrary depending on what channel you're watching. They're so verbal, and this is it, and this is law, and it's not. And I'm confused as an adult. I've watched a government for a long, long time. How about voting? How about, I know you introduce voting as far as like within the school, the classroom itself, let's vote on this, so they understand the concept of the importance of that vote?
Absolutely. And our kids within a few short years will be voting, and yours too.
Really,
so they come in thinking that this is a foreign concept, and I don't need to deal with this until I'm an adult. Oh, really? But then they quickly learn, hey, in a few years, I need to know the issues. I need to understand them. I need to know. And they do get confused about we talk about the Electoral College. I think most adults are probably confused about the Electoral College. So the first thing that pops in their head is, well, my vote doesn't really count. And we try to explain to them that your vote counts. It just doesn't count in the way that you think it counts. It's extremely, extremely important. And the big thing, like we say, is we hammer just I tell them all the time, I don't care, and I know we mentioned last time when we did the League of Women Voters that you take the issues from your own personal point of view, and you explain this is kind of how I feel, but you need to form your own ideas. I think our kids are a little bit too young for that, so I don't give any personal opinions at all. And I tell them all the time, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, learn the issues and then go vote. That's the most important thing. You have to have that voice to vote. It
is so important.
Absolutely.
Next, we're moving on to the high school level at Shepherd High School. Now you teach juniors and seniors, or just seniors?
So I have sophomores and juniors, and then I teach seniors with government usually in the summer. When I do summer school.
And how do you find them? Now I know they're coming in very well equipped, coming from District 128. How about the rest of the feed-in elementary schools?
It definitely varies. I do think our schools close to us do a really great job of giving them the basics. The basics are important. They have to come in understanding the framework, so that we can dive in deeper to particular cases, court cases, case studies, applying actual aspects of the government to today, to what's going on, so that they can understand how it works. So I do feel like they come in pretty well prepared.
Okay. And how about relating to themselves? Are they interested? Because now they're older. They're watching television. I don't know if they're watching as much as maybe the grade school kids are, because there's so many other things that they're watching and being involved in. But they're interested and they understand the importance of the vote. The League of Women Voters does registration for voting at Shepherd High School, and along with some other high schools. And it's interesting to have them come in, because they do have to be 18 by the next election date, and they know that. And then some of the teachers are very cooperative, because they give them maybe a little extra credit if they come in with the green card, that they have voted. So that's, and then I'll tell you, when they had, I think the local election in Palos Heights had an election on marijuana. Did you want to legalize marijuana? And we used to maybe the very top 30 people that we would register. We had over 80, because it was a very important concept to them, and something that it touched them. And so that was kind of fun to see. But generally speaking, are they interested in high school?
I think yes, and I think as stated earlier, that social media has fueled a lot of that, because they will come in, hey, Ms. Hannah, I heard this, I heard that, and they want to know what's right and what's real and all of that. And I always say, all right, well, let's fact check it. So we started the school year with I had a whole fact checking lesson about how they go through, and like when you do see something either on the news, in print, on the internet, how do you check it? And so there's factcheck.org, PolitiFact, and Snopes. I teach them Snopes. So they literally highlight a headline, cut, paste it, copy it into one of those sites, and it'll come up. What's true, what isn't true, what's partially true, what's false, completely false. So I said that's kind of where you have to start. Now what you feel about something is something totally different, but just the facts first. Just get the facts and understand what is real. And what's just bluster, because there is so much of that. And the other thing I try to tell them too, and I think even a lot of adults forget this, is this has been going on for as long as the country has been around, that there's been bickering and back and forth and clear divisions between the two sides. It's just that it's so much more in focus now with 24/7 news cycles and social media. We just didn't hear it and see it as much in the past. Yeah, and it's immediate. You're right.
It's immediate.
The second somebody says something.
It's just amazing. I almost feel sorry for some politicians have to watch themselves and what they say all the time, because it's recorded and it's out there.
I know. And the kids ask me all the time, like, why don't you run for office? And I said, are you kidding me? I'm teaching you to grow up and do that. I don't want to do that. It's too much. I can't take what it would do, to my everyday life, as far as I'm putting everything under the microscope. I mean, I have nothing to hide, but it just seems like the smallest thing can be, turned into something major. So.
Well, and you're making them excited about it, and you're developing an excitement for this. Because I was reading an article in the paper, and it was saying that people going into college now are not majoring in history. They're all computer science. They're all going to that because that's where the jobs are, I'm guessing, and that's where they're headed. But the history people aren't there, so they're not learning the history of government, and they're not learning the history of our country and how we began.
My passion began for history and all things social studies with my high school history teachers. And I felt like I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to have this big career and I'm going to make a ton of money and all that. It was just, it was what I loved. And really the only option, unless you're going to work in a museum or you're going to do research, is teaching. And unfortunately, his social studies is not on any standardized test. They don't. I feel like it's.
Isn't that a shame?
It is. It used to be on it. In fact, District 218 started requiring geography years ago because geography was thrown onto the test and then it was taken off, and we just kept geography as a requirement. So as every freshman coming into 218 schools has to take geography, and along with that is the cultural aspect. So when they come to me, even in AP European History as sophomores, you know, I might throw in something every once in a while that they go, oh yeah, that's just like, and they'll connect it to geography. So I know that making them take these classes is what's kind of like alluring them to these different issues, but unfortunately it doesn't seem as important as, you know, math, science, reading, you know, comprehension on those things. But I think the more we talk about it and do things like this, and talk about voting especially, it will come to light. And it has been discussed, I think, more, the importance of a good civic understanding. You cannot be a contributing citizen unless you know these things. And I tell them all the time, you might forget the causes of the War of 1812. Cool. I want you to know how to vote. I want you to know why it matters, what's important, how to get the information, because I said you're walking around with computers in your pocket, for God's sake. It's not just, you know, a communication device. You have all this. You can't say I don't know. I don't know needs to be eliminated from our vocabulary, because there's no such thing. You could Google anything. You don't even have to type it. Yeah, you could just ask Google, and she'll tell you everything. You know, and that's where a good start. You know, and then you get to books and newspapers and, you know, all of those things. But at least start with, you know, some sort of.
They'll just branch out from the smartphone and go into the library. You can pick up things and read about it. If you can spark an interest, if you can just spark an interest, you guys
that's the hard part.
Yeah, well,
it is.
It is. Of course
I've been bringing in articles on Sundays. I read the Tribune and the New York Times, and I get the Trib 3 days a week. But on Sunday I get the New York Times as well, and I just tear whole pages out and put them on the bulletin board, put them on my board. Did you guys see this? What about that? You know, and we kind of talk about it, and I show them, you know, how to evaluate, you know, a story. You know, is this being, you know, completely honest? Is this slanted? You know, kind of thing. So hopefully they get a whole picture.
Do they read the newspaper other than in a classroom, or?
I will say only if I make them. They will read an article if I pass it out and say, okay, you got 10 minutes, read this. You know, we're going to talk about it. But I don't think they're searching it out. Now, I did suggest the news app, and a lot of kids are.
Oh, really?
I say to them, if you guys are testing and you see me walking around with my iPad, you see me doing this, I'm not on social media. I'm on the news app, and I hold it up and show them. And it has all of these different sites. It's not just one. It's left and right. It's center. And I just page through it while you guys are testing or whatever. I'm walking around and I'm looking at the news. And I said, you need to take some time to do that instead of just focusing on constantly who's posting what. Just look at some news. So I do have a couple kids, especially my early morning honors juniors, who come in. They're like, Miss Hannah, I have a story for you. Oh my God, you know, and they'll pull up their phones and show me a story, because I'm like, what news site said that? And she'll be like, wait, CBS said that. I'm like, okay, so, you know, because I have a girl who constantly she knows I'm going to check her, so she'll tell me what news site it is. So they, you know, I feel like it's slowly we're pulling them along, but it's a daily fight. It really is.
Really, if you can just excite them.
Sure.
And especially more on your level, if you can just get them excited and go home and encourage their parents, get involved, vote, read the paper, read what's going on. It's not just the financials, you know, to read what the history is so important, you know, type thing. There's such talk about the Electoral College now, and I'm reading a lot about that. And in League, I was very surprised. I didn't know that until that meeting. The Electoral College is one of the League's things to disband, to go back to one vote. I'm sorry, one vote per person. Can you explain that to me a little bit? Is there an advantage one to the other? It seems...
It is such a complicated mess. I think that the Founding Fathers thought that this was a way to sort of protect us from putting someone in office who really did not belong there, and it was also a way to make sure that fair representation across, because when they wrote it into the Constitution, you realize there were only 13 states. They had no idea what was going to happen and how big our population was going to get, and to account for all of that, this is what they thought was the most fair way. However, I will say that considering there have been several elections where the Electoral College was a problem, and where people, you know, actually won the popular vote and didn't get the seat, you know,
That's happened
in the White
twice
House.
that I'm aware of.
Yes, and
There
it's
might
so
be more than that.
frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. So I feel like more sort of education and more research on this needs to be done. I need to understand myself better so I could tell the kids, you know, what is the reason that we can't just let it go? Why can't we just do the popular vote? I'm assuming there's, and I think there is some sort of mathematical, you know, representation issue out there, but I can't explain it.
I don't understand it myself.
I would have to get someone a little more experienced in that, you know, to help explain that a little bit more, do a little bit more research on that. But it's definitely worth debating, discussing, putting it out there, and seeing what we can do. It's our country. This is what I keep telling the kids. Like when something isn't going right or we don't like it, we change it. We are the government. We are the laws. We make them. We approve them. That's part of what a democracy is. That is what a democracy is.
But it's a hard one. It's a hard to explain.
Yeah.
Because you see it not happening a lot, and then it's not working. But it should work, and it does work. And people just
it absolutely does.
Get involved. Read what's in the paper. Read what you hear on a valid newscast and act on it or talk about it with your family. It's fun for parents if they can pick it. I bet your kids come home with some good subject matter for the dinner table. Or
my own sons, I have two teenage sons, and they absolutely do. And their discussions with their friends have turned more political as they are constantly being exposed to it. I just have it on TV all the time. So they'll ask me questions, and then we have discussions, and they'll come home and they'll say, oh, we got into a political argument, you know, which makes me laugh. I'm thinking, these teenagers, right? They're talking about, you know, what do we really need this and immigration and all this other stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I'm impressed that you guys are talking about it, but what I keep saying is please do not get personal, don't get mean, don't attack somebody. You know, you don't want to talk about someone's intelligence or lack thereof due to their point of view, and that's what young people do.
Of course
they go right to insults, and I keep saying
you
can't do that. That's a main thing that I'm pushing with my own children and my students, that stick to the issue, stick to the facts.
And it happens quick.
Yeah.
It happens very quick.
People get fired up. They really do. I think because a lot of these things we do take very personally, and some of it is personal, and some of it is based on our own personal experience too. And I think what we have to remember is this country is huge. There's so many people, you know. So what might affect us here in our little part of the world could be very different in another part of the country, and we just really have to keep that in mind, and you know, make sure that people their needs are being addressed.
Well, at the last vote in Chicago, that was so amazing to me what had happened. The voter turnout. I couldn't believe that people did not. It was covered constantly on television. The runoff vote.
Right.
The runoff vote between the two women. And I couldn't believe that the vote would be low. I would think everyone would jump in there. If I was a citizen of Chicago, I would have been first. This is the way you can make your feelings known. This is how you can express yourself. Don't just talk to your parents, don't just talk to your family and be angry about something or be really thrilled about something. Share that and get people involved. You need to get involved. You need to vote. I was just appalled at the lack of people. And then I know they're trying to blame it on certain generations that they didn't show up or they don't vote or they whatever. Do you find a difference in generations as far as turning out to vote or
for sure.
paying attention?
I do, and I tell the kids every year that the 18 to 24-year-old age group is the lowest voter turnout typically. And I said, I don't understand it. I was so excited I couldn't wait to go vote and get my little sticker and run around and tell everybody. And so I've been trying to make that more sound more attractive to them and just how important it is. And I ask them all the time, why do you think people don't vote? In fact, I had them interview their parents at the midterm elections. I said, record it for extra credit if it's playable in class, which some of them were not because parents got really riled up. I was like, okay, I'll watch that one privately. Yes, but I loved it though. I loved that they, got excited about it. But they had asked their parents, and a lot of them, would say things like it didn't matter anyway, or they didn't know enough about the candidates. And I said to the class, okay, so if that's the case, how are you going to fix this? You're the next generation. Fix it. What are you going to do? You can't say things like I don't know or I don't get it. You're not allowed to say that. It's not true. Because you do know. I'm telling you, number one, and again, Google it. You know what I mean? Look it up. Get information in your hands and then go take care of this. I said, because you can't say things like, oh, I don't understand insurance. I don't understand, the law. Okay, when you're 65, good luck, because you're not going to be able to address the needs of yourself and your own family because you didn't pay attention. And you're going to be stuck with these laws and people in position that, you know, don't care enough or didn't do the right thing or didn't make the right choice or represent you well. And that's what you want. You want them to represent you. That's their job. Make them do their job.
Mm-hmm. And you're dealing on such a different age level. How do you send your kids off at the end of the semester, at the end of the year? Because that's such a different, it's not at high school level. I think they really can vote now at 18.
Yeah.
They really can take that a step further.
We've had them register, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, they come out and register. They get excited about that.
Yeah, I think just give them the tools, and they get inundated with the message over and over, and you know, it just gets to the point where they shut down. You know, we're adults, and you know, you get to the point where you're like, oh, you know, I need a break from politics for a little bit. So they get inundated. We just give them the tools. You know, be able to look at something and figure out if there's some kind of a bias or a slant there. You know, I tell my kids all the time, you know, do you want the right to complain about your politicians? Then go vote. That's what voting does. It gives you the right to complain. And if you don't vote, then don't complain. So yeah, and you know, like you mentioned, it's. I just see this kind of dangerous trend that social studies and history is the only core subject that is not standardized tests. And you know, administrators and school boards, you know, they have to concentrate on reading and math, especially at the lower grades. So you know, social studies, there's got to be something. There's only so many minutes in a school day. Something has to be pushed to the side a little bit, and unfortunately it's history and social studies. And like you said, I mean, now if ever that we needed to understand what's going on in our country, it's right now. So you know, just giving them the tools to do it on their own. That's fantastic that you know, you have kids come back the next day and talk about things they've read or things they've seen on TV. So if you do that, you know, even if they get fired up about it, you know, there's at least an interest there. So you know, just creating that interest and being able to look at something and form your own opinion, that's really the big things that we can do.
Well, as I said earlier, we're so taken with computer now, and the kids, rightfully so, that's where the jobs are, and so that's where they go into college that they're headed for. But this is so important too. You know, if they stress history, make that mandatory, just to learn the Constitution, the Constitution book. So we have all the amendments to the Constitution. They're what untold number of amendments to the Constitution. But it's so important to care. You need to care. Because if you don't care, who's going to care? And there are people that are going to take over that don't care the way you care. So it's just, you have to be involved. Final words?
Just that I hope that even just this conversation could make people maybe not in education, you don't necessarily have to be a teacher to influence a young person, to be able to say like, hey, you know, hey, are you going to vote? Do you know what the issues are? Are you aware of these candidates? You know, your children, your grandchildren, have conversations with them. I know my son yesterday, with it being Easter and being with his dad's side of the family, you know, he was like, oh God, I hope some political issues don't come up at the dinner table. I don't want everything to get all emotional and everybody to get. But I said it's good though. Let it happen. Let that. So
sadly, it is at the dinner table.
Right.
Sadly.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be, you know, an emotional, you know, train wreck. It could just be, you know, a discourse. And I think that's the thing that we're lacking. We're forgetting about that. It's historical. Like, this is the ancient Greeks. This is what they did. This is where democracy was born, where people were having conversations. So I think that would be my final word, would just be to continue to do that. Talk to young people, keep the conversation going so it's fresh and in their head.
Yeah. Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. I think you know, we hear that phrase all the time. It takes a village to raise a child. I mean, it's no more apparent than in civics. Not everybody understands algebra. Not everybody understands grammar. You know, with our grading systems, how their grading system changes. We have parents that don't understand the graph. Sometimes I look at our grading system and I'm not 100% sure. But civics is, everybody knows something about how civics affects their lives. You know, if it's something as small as a speeding ticket, you know, you've been you know, exposed to civics your entire life. So we're all really truly experts, and that's where it should happen, at the dinner table, through conversations. Watch the news. You know, just talk with your children about, you know, what they're seeing and what they're hearing, and, you know, hopefully let them formulate their own opinions.
I think civics is a hard word, You know, what does it mean? I mean, it's thrown around, but I wonder if anyone really knows what civics is. Rather than political science, what else would you call it? I mean, I had to look up literally to find out what it is and what it entails. It's a hard word.
Yep.
It doesn't explain itself.
Correct.
As long as you understand that there are rights and there are responsibilities, and you can't enjoy the rights, or you shouldn't be able to enjoy the rights without the responsibilities. That's like block number one, and then you go from there.
That's a wonderful way to end.
Yeah,
That's right.
Perfect.
That's right.
Well said. I agree.
Well said is right. Thank you, Gina Hanna, teaches at School District 218. I'm going to get it straight this time. Shepherd High School. Ryan Mahoney teaches at Independence Junior High here in Palos Heights, both in Palos Heights. We're very, very lucky as parents to have you two teaching our children. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. And thank you always for watching us here at Palos Heights Community Channel 4.